Before we start, I would just like to give you a brief bio of our first speaker, Professor King. Professor Irwin King is Associate Dean at the Faculty of Engineering and Professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He has over 300 technical publications in areas of machine learning, social computing, web intelligence, data mining, multimedia information processing for big data, all are areas I don't know anything about. Professor King is the book series editor for social media and social computing with Taylor and Francis. He's also associate editor of the Neural Network Journal and ACM Transactions on knowledge discovery from data. At present, one of the major research interests of Professor King is internationalization of education through e-learning platforms. He's the principal investigator of the Knowledge and Education Exchange Platform Project at the Chinese University of Hong Kong called the KEEP Project. So without further ado, may I pass it on to Professor King. A round of applause.
Good. I'm very happy to be here, and thank Mike for inviting me to be here.
You would need to use the mic.
It is it on?
Yeah.
Is it on? Oh, I had to use both mic? Okay, that's interesting. Okay. In fact, this previous homework, I thought it was very interesting because you deal with ethics in AI, and we could talk a lot more about this. It's something that I'm also very, very interested in because recently, actually, a whole bunch of Google engineers, they resigned from their job because Google was involved in using AI for governmental contract in weaponry. So this is really, right now, currently, this is a very hotly debated area, not only for our engineers, not only for Christian, but for lawyers, for law professors, and many other fields. Where do you draw the line? Well, how do you codify ethics? Because ethics is, you'll see that I have a slice for, it's like the beauty is in the eyes of beholder. Ethics is in the eye of beholder as well. So this is something that we could talk about. But today, I'd like to actually share a few things about education, technology, and faith in terms of redeeming technology. Now, I had to say this. I'm not an educator by training. I fall into this role as associate dean, and so some of the things I say may not be, if you're coming from the education faculty, it might not be exactly what you're expecting, but I hope that this will generate a good discussion, okay? So let's begin. This is our education system right now. It says this is that for fair selection of everybody, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb up that tree. And we all know that we're all different. And but the way that we do assessment and we do examination in our education system is to use the same yardstick for everybody. Okay. Now I could give another talk on using big data in education. And in big data in education, we can actually personalize a lot of things because we know we have a lot more assessment points, we have a lot more sensor and things. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. But anyway, this is just something that to generate your thoughts. Now, education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. Okay, this is Albert Einstein. I thought that was really appropriate because I think if you reflect back on your college education, I think 80-90% are not very useful. There's only maybe 10-20% that's really, really good, and then you kind of use that over and over. And not so much about the knowledge, as we all know, knowledge changes all the time, right? And our student, we're not trying to teach them about knowledge. We're trying to teach them the skill to acquire knowledge, to process knowledge, to manipulate knowledge, to create synthesis and synthesize knowledge, and so on and so forth. But anyway, this was a very interesting quote from Albert Einstein. Now, my task for today is this. Actually, your homework. Oh, you can't see this, huh? No. Yeah, you can't see this. But anyway, you're supposed to read Hubert Dreyfus' anonymity versus a commitment, the danger of education on the internet, okay, in the book. And I just very quickly summarize what he's, the whole paper is about. It's basically he's trying to use Søren Kierkegaard, the philosopher, right, view of the three spheres, the aesthetic sphere, the ethical sphere, and the religious sphere, to kind of reflect to our current situation of our education system or the internet per se, okay? And then I'm going to try to draw that from these three spheres. I'm going to use it for the internet, and from internet, I'm going to do it for education technology. So these two spheres, the aesthetic and the ethical, is basically existential decision things, and I'll explain briefly what that is. But basically here is what he would like to see. It's a commitment. It's an unconditional commitment that people take the leap of faith to. And that's the ultimate goal, perhaps even for education. Okay, so education, you could deal with the aesthetic, the ethical, but the final proof in the pudding is that the person make an unconditional commitment to something, for some cause, or some purpose, and so on and so forth. So this is what Hubert Dreyfus is trying to say. Okay, so the first slide is this. This is what happened in 1 minute on the internet. Okay, so you can see this. Netflix has 70,000 hours watched in 1 minute. Okay, 16 million text messages, 4.1 video viewed, 342,000 apps being downloaded in 1 minute in 2017. Okay, and there are many things happening. And what that means is basically what he's saying is that maybe 10, 20 years ago, we had the issue of lack of access of information. But nowadays is the totally opposite. We are overwhelmed. We're being flooded. We're being swimming. We're being drowned by information. Okay, you go to MTR, you see people swiping. You go to the core class, people use computer and all that. Actually, I do a lot of people using computer in my class, but this is for a different purpose. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we are bombarded constantly with information, with sensory stimuli, and with all sorts of things on the internet. And what that means is this, at least in the aesthetic sphere that Kierkegaard was talking about, the internet actually undermines commitment and meaning because everything is very shallow. Internet, you are in front of the computer, clicking, searching, doing all this thing is very shallow. There's no commitment. You don't need to commit to anything on the internet, right? Everything is more or less free unless you pay for it, right? So there's no commitment, and the meaning, it actually, do you believe in social media? Who knows, right? Do you actually trust news sources, a news source these days? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of people actually think Facebook is real news, or right, or many other sources as news, real news. So what we have done is that we actually fail to distinguish the important from the trivial, because there are just too many things in front of us. If you're at a buffet, you sometimes you don't know what to start, and you don't know what's good, and this is the problem. It's hard for us to know what is important and what is irrelevant and not important. And think about the way that you digest your social media information. Right? Oftentimes is that afterward you go, that was stupid that I wasted half an hour watching this video. That means nothing to me. So we had to do something. Okay. So the immediacy and the indiscriminate available information produce anonymous and detached spectator. And that's exactly what what we do on our computer behind closed door, it's anonymous, and we're totally detached from the ethical, from the public, right? And this is where I think Kierkegaard is saying that there is really issue, because people don't commit. They don't need to commit, and they are detached. There's no action being produced. On the internet, men are demoralized in the shortest possible time, on the largest possible scale, at the cheapest possible price. I think this is such a nice quote, okay? You understand that internet information, unless it's censored by China government, okay? Internet information is monotonic knowledge. That means that these knowledge, once it's on the internet, you can't retract that. You cannot delete it like a transaction. Think about that. Okay, your information, whatever you did, what did not do, or whatever, that is on the internet, it will more likely going to be there for till eternity. Because the internet is such a great repository of nothingness. It does have something, but it's also a great repository of nothingness. Okay? So, the aesthetic sphere of the existent is to come into information as a boundless source of enjoyment, and that's what we do. If you look at it, I do research in social computing, and the 3 S that we do is we do search, we do what? 3 S's. We shop. I forgot the last one. No, we socialize. We share and socialize. Okay, the 3 S's, right? So this is what we do, internet. Okay, but it's really we don't have the commitment. Now, the ethical sphere, the second sphere, the first one's aesthetic. Aesthetic is the basic thing that we're swimming in, right? Now, when you have all these knowledge right here outside, all these data, we call it, right? How do we actually get from, I think Irwin talked about this too, how do you get from data, where you have sensory signals and all that, transfer that into information, and from information to knowledge, and knowledge to wisdom, and that wisdom at the end, you do decision making. Okay, so this is the hierarchy called DIKWD, okay? And this is very, I'm sorry? Oh, well, yeah, yeah, it's very hard because this is a past, this is what, and this is why, and then and this part is really get more and more difficult. Okay, as engineer, as a computer scientist, we basically just deal with even these two. We don't even deal with knowledge in that sense, right? You accumulate knowledge, but it's easier to deal with this because these are codifiable, right? Because these are information 0 and 1. And this is an algorithm, right? And the algorithm that eventually have to make a decision. And how do you codify that? For engineers, easy. But how do you codify ethics? That's hard. Okay? So anyway. So the religious sphere, which is the third sphere, the third thing, where it takes the leap of faith. This is where things interesting. Okay? Making one unconditional commitment. Okay? And internet allows unconditional commitment, but does not support them that well. And we're gonna see a little bit later on how can we do better support. Information technology does not prohibit unconditional commitment, but it does inhibit them. It does inhibit some of this commitment and meaning in our real world. Learning by apprenticeship can work only in the nearness in the classroom laboratory, never in cyberspace. At least this is what Dreyfus say. Okay, I'm trying to say that we're trying to push that out a little more with technology available, like AR, VR, and MR. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit of that, but at least this is what his premise, his argument, to say that, you know, apprenticeship, you really have to take someone into a mentorship, right, coaching. You really have to do one-on-one. There's no way that you could do mentorship of 100,000 people on the internet, okay? And many of these things are transferred really through a small, closed, you know, tightly knitted apprenticeship, okay, instead of that. Now, okay, so having these three things, gone through these three things, I like to just quickly say this is the Bloom's taxonomy. You remember, recognize, and you know. So when I do this, I hope that you're supposed to only remember 10% of what I said, okay? And then if you do a little bit more, then you will understand. Maybe that's 20, 30%. And then hopefully, if you could use something that you learned today and create something, like in the next time, then perhaps you understood 80-90% what I say. So this is Bloom's learning taxonomy. I want to share with this because it really also relates to the apprenticeship, right? Because you could actually take people from the very basic knowledge. I have just shown you a PPT. Okay, you remember PPT, but you don't know what to do with it, all the way to, hey, let me help you to create something alongside with you and to synthesize knowledge. And this is really the Bloom's learning taxonomy. Okay, and this is really the expansion of the previous way into three-dimensional thing. So earlier was more of a one-dimensional, but here is really remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. And here is the knowledge dimension. We have factual, conceptual, procedure, and metacognitive. Okay, so ethics maybe lie somewhere here, right? Somewhere higher level up there. But you can see that all these things are all different things verbs that people use, okay, to describe. So understand, conceptual is are you able to classify the difference between objects? Or can you group them differently? So if you could do that, and this is very interesting. And I guess our ultimate goal is trying to bring people, for education, is to bring people from maybe somewhere here, more closely up to this level. And that's the goal. The ultimate goal for our educator is to get student, okay, from the knowledge data level, the aesthetic level, to the ethical level, and hopefully to the religious sphere. The last stage where you can actually do creation and synthesis and so on and so forth. Okay? So this is all way of apprenticeship, and I'm proposing that 21st century. This is what we're going to do. And very quickly, I'm not going to go through the details here, but I want to just share with you some of the challenges and opportunities that we have. The presentation here is slightly different from your thing, so it's okay if I skip a few slides or add a few slides. I think one thing is, again, augmented virtual mixed reality is on the rise, okay? Knowledge is very static, stale, but if you introduce this, at least, the MOOC classes that you might be producing, right? One of the shortcomings of MOOC classes is that you cannot experience something, like lab work. You cannot do a MOOC class of lab work because you just don't have the equipment, you don't have the apparatus and all that stuff. You could teach knowledge quite well on a MOOC class. But with the introduction of augmented mixed reality, you could bring that a lot more closer, okay? But again, but this is very interesting too. Recently the U.S. has, this massive shooting from a student, right? And it turned out that a lot of studies have suggested that all these shooting is a result of kids playing violent games where they are involved in the virtual reality, augmented reality world that they don't think that life really does matter, and so on and so forth. So there are limitations. There are also issues that we need to think about as a Christian response, as how far, and because you could do amazing things to teach science, you could also do really horrible things with virtual reality as well. Okay, AI in education. I just realized a few days ago that Chinese government, I think they quoted that quarter of their assignments are actually being graded by robots. Okay, well, I don't know where that come from. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot more now, AI is being used in education in terms of assessment, in terms of evaluation, and so on and so forth. So when you write papers, okay, I have a system called VeryGuide system, by the way. I'm the creator of VeryGuide system. It was a plagiarism detection system. So I could actually detect, if you submit a report, whether this report is similar to other reports. Okay, that's one step of also bringing AI into the classroom. So AI in education is upcoming fast. What are some of the ethical issues that we could also talk about this? Okay, anyway, computational thinking is something that I'm keenly interested in doing. So computational thinking is not only for engineers, it turns out. Okay, this is actually for everybody because it's a framework for organize your thoughts and really apply the engineer's structure framework. So right here, the concepts, you have logic, you have algorithm, decomposition, patterns. You're looking for patterns, you're looking for abstraction, you're looking for evaluation. The way that you approach this is you tinker. Okay, I give you something, you tinker with it, like a Lego set, right? You could tinker with this. You could create something, debug, preserve, and collaborate with the team. Okay, so this is a framework for computational thinking. Okay, and this could be applied in social science. So even you talk about the War of 1812, then you may ask questions. You know, I mean, what was the economic state? How would that affect the War of 1812? Then I want you to use these things to calculate how much military supply that you need, and how do you actually, get them to the front end? Why did they lose that war? Actually, how did they lose that war? Give me do you see the pattern in other wars that preceded, the 1812 wars and so on and so forth? So computational thinking is also on the rise. Okay, this is what the U.S. is proposing, is to use this framework in every discipline, because it's a very good framework for people to think through a thing. Now, obviously, mobile learning is also on the rise, right? We don't need to sit in front of the computer. It's not tied in. And you could do a lot of things on your mobile phone. So subject matters, easy, very simple navigation, interaction, social gamification, and goal and rewards. Mobile learning is good. Gamification, another thing, is not. I'm not talking about just playing games like these first shooter games. Okay, but these games are basically kind of like a Risk, where you take territory when you actually could answer questions. So this is in the form of we're having a lot of question bank for a class. And if you answer them, you actually could take more territories and you will win. And you could actually give or set up questions. And if other people think that this is a hard question, good and hard question, then you also get more points. So we could set up an exchange economy by using games, and that's very, very interesting. Curated education content, because like I said, we're swimming in content right now. Somebody needs to tell you what is good and what is not good. And therefore, there's still meaning for universities. You know, of course, you could go online, you could search for anything you want, but the university supposedly tell you what is meaningful, what is relevant, and so on and so forth. So curated result is good. Microlearning is another thing that we want to do. Microlearning, basically you divide your knowledge into small chunks. So you don't learn hour and 30 minutes of lecture at one time, but you learn 6 minutes of concept, and then you string them together into a larger a conceptual framework. So this is taking a very small bite at a concept, and it turned out to be, this is quite effective. They did some study. Coursera suggested 6 minutes. If more than 6 minutes of video, people don't watch. So anything up to 6 minutes, and that is really serious. There's a huge drop. So do not tape like this. Do not tape my lecture for 30 minutes and ask people to watch it. Okay. For document things is okay, but for learning purpose, this is not good. Okay, 6 minutes a chunk is much, much better. So microlearning, and then microlearning could actually lead to what we call a personalized learning path. So, before it's like, I'm the teacher, I teach you, and this is the learning path I want everybody to take. But right now, if you break these knowledge module into smaller chunks, different people might take different learning path to achieve the same goal. Because some people have experience, so they don't have to redo that part. Some people might require more attention on certain part. So right now what we're doing is really personalized learning. Okay, we try to do is personalized learning. And another new thing because of the internet is what we call a peer-to-peer learning. peer-to-peer learning is on the rise and is very, very important. The reason why is that internet is able to actually connect us, okay, not only inside the class, but outside the class. We use messaging apps. We use many different ways to actually communicate. And in fact, for example, when we had a protest, the Yellow Umbrella movement, a lot of people, there are courses being created that outside of Hong Kong people were actually interacting with those people who are doing the protests and to learn what was going on. You know, what were you doing? Why are you doing this? And so on and so forth. So peer-to-peer learning is really important. And because of the internet, we're able to do this. Whereas apprenticeship, you can't. You can only do it with 3 or 4 people. Okay? So active learning, this is another thing. I only want to say it is because I use it in my classroom. So when I teach something, I want them to do it right there. It's almost like right now, I want you to go there and write that algorithm or do that programming, or experiment with a chemical equation that I just gave you right now, because that will get you you will remember much better. Now, obviously, one of the biggest thing lately is education analytics. Now we could actually measure, we could manipulate, we could process, we could calculate, all sorts of stuff, right? Education analytic is good. You can see this is a chart of what the education analytic may look like, and this is some of the reason why that we should do learning analytics. But then there's the other side as well, ethical issues. How much do you collect, and do you use that? I mean, I could predict at-risk student, but would that student also have a bad label being a at-risk student? I mean, that person may not be an at-risk student. So whatever we actually classify you, and that's not maybe the reality too, right? So what would happen? Okay, so learning analytics, the data is good and bad at the same time. Okay, assessment method, these are very interesting. Assessment method, these are formal assessment. There's some new technology, right? So online, like for example, they ask you to do typing, okay? It turns out that you're typing, the way that you type, different characters, and how fast you type is your signature. So we could use that to verify when you're going to take a test. If I ask you to type something, we could actually verify who you are. We could also use the eye scan. There's some computer vision thing to actually scan. For example, there could be a camera right here and scan this whole thing to see who is actually paying attention. And it's good for the student and also for the teacher, right? Because the teacher, if 80% of the students are not paying attention, maybe the teacher does not know how to do classroom management and is not very interesting, right? And so on and so forth. So there are technology right now to do assessment. And I just want to share some of this in here, quality assessment. And lastly, I think this is probably the last one, is really bring your own device. Right now it's very popular. School don't provide you with computers and things like that. They all bring your own device right now. So this is the latest in the education technology. I just want to show a few slides about what KEEP is. KEEP stands for Knowledge Education Exchange Platform. And this is actually a platform that involves all institutions in Hong Kong. And we're the one who's taken the lead on this. And we also work with MOOC providers and other providers. And what we do is we index their content. So you could come to our KEEP and do one search. You'll get all the MOOC content. You don't have to go to Coursera or edX or Future Learn, each individual one. You come to ours, we do that. We also have content on our things. And then you could also participate. In fact, you could put this whole series things up there for the global audience as well. Okay, so you can make this into a course because we give you Moodle for free. We give you Open edX for free that you could actually do courses, MOOC courses on our platform. And here are just some services that we provide, okay? And there's some stats we have. We have 24K registered user, 61K course index, 12K class poll interactions, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the milestones that we have as of June 2018. Okay, my time is up. So there are some points to ponder, and I'm giving out this. I know I didn't put it down there, but if you would like, just jot this down. Does information technology really inhibit unconditional commitment? Okay, does it or does not? Or is it current? Are we getting better at unconditional commitment using technology? You're saying no. Okay, so we'll come back. Which of the education technology poses the most challenge, or most threat, or opportunity to our faith, and why? Okay, so these are some of the things I would like. Can we overcome or promote challenges or opportunities in education technology in terms of policy, pedagogy, and technology? Okay, we have our own circle or sphere of influence. We could influence people, policymakers. We could influence through our technology. We could influence through an innovative way of teaching, through pedagogy. What can we do? Okay, that's my question to you. Okay, so this is my final remark. My final remark is this. Education technology has transformed the landscape of learning, definitely, without a doubt. In fact, in the last 5 to 10 years, it has accelerated, okay, in terms of transforming the way that we learn and teach and being educated. Okay, there are online MicroMaster programs and so on and so forth. So this has really quickened. And I want you to maybe think about the policy, pedagogy, and technology. How does that impact these three things? Education technology can inhibit or promote actions for unconditional commitment in the eye of beholder. So I'll just leave it like that, because I think that this is more subjective than objective. And then last slides is that I forgot to make a backup of my brain. So everything I learned last semester was lost. So I hope that you back up your brain, because I crossed that out as the last 30 minutes. So I'm hoping that you will make a backup copy of your brain so that everything that you just heard in the last 30 minutes will be kept, okay? And that's it. Thank you very much.